All right. Welcome to the Lancaster Affordable Housing Trust meeting of Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 via Zoom. This meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast on the Sterling-Lancaster cable TV, as well as on the new YouTube channel that the cable uses instead of town hall streams. We are calling our meeting to order at 7:06 p.m. this evening, and we'll start with our roll call attendance. Trustee Jason Allison.
Here.
Trustee Frank Streeter. Frank, you're muted.
Here.
Trustee Deborah Williams.
Here.
And a very warm welcome to our newest trustee, Kristen Briner.
Here. Hello.
Hi, Kristen.
How are you?
Good. I'm so glad you're here.
Me too. Thank you.
And Trustee and Chair Victoria Petracca is here. We are all on board. We have a quorum and we can get underway. I did want to take a minute to extend a warm welcome to Kristen this evening. Kristen is replacing Carolyn Reed, who moved from Lancaster, unfortunately for us. And we're just delighted, Kristen, that you have stepped up and you'd like to be a part of producing more affordable housing in Lancaster, preserving the affordable housing that we do have. Your background was very interesting to us. I'm thrilled that the select board appointed you. And do you want to take a minute just for the folks that are going to see this on cable or on the recording? I know that to maybe introduce yourself, I know the trustees read your letter, but if you want to just take a minute, maybe to just say a few words about your background, I think it would be great for people to know.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you for trusting me with this position. I've pretty much been in and out of a lot of different aspects of housing. I started out, right out of high school almost with working for Section 8 housing. I've worked in property management, and for the past probably 10 or 15 years or so, I've been working for general contractors with commercial and residential housing. Think of the big high rises with the luxury apartments and all the amenities and the pools and things like that. So that's kind of the housing we've been focusing on. Yep. So I do have experience dealing with developers and different aspects there. And also personally, I am a single parent, so I've been on the renter side of it, the lack of housing in Lancaster and affordable housing and things like that. So I feel like I've got a pretty good all around experience personally and professionally.
Kristen, you have a super background for this position.
Thank you.
I am 2000% behind you and support you. Thank you so much for stepping up. Your background is totally relevant to the position in more ways than one. And I'm just thrilled that you're part of our team now. So thank you so much. And
thank you.
Anything that we can do to help, whether it's in a meeting or if it's training that you need or anything that we can do to fill in any knowledge gaps. I
was going to say that I would just, kind of lead for a little bit of a learning curve, but, I do try to go back, and I've got experience taking minutes, and, so these are great minutes to have to read over and get caught up. So I'll get there.
Okay. I know that you got sworn in at
I did.
The town clerk's office. So thank you for doing that. So you can definitely vote tonight and all that.
Okay.
One thing that you just need to take care of, a housekeeping item, is there are 2 online training sessions.
I did do those, and Mandy told me the certificates were just going to get sent directly to her, but I have copies if you want them for whatever reason. No. Okay.
The town clerk just needs to know that you did the ethics training and the other one. All town board members have to take those those trainings so that we are completely aware of all of our responsibilities and potential conflicts of interest and all that.
Understood. It was a very informative little training. So.
It is, isn't it? It's super interesting. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I'm good. We've got those done.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much, Kristen. All right.
Yes,
I'm going to move on in the agenda. Approval of meeting minutes, review and take action on our meeting minutes from August 1st and September 5th. I don't think, Frank, I know August 5th has been written, but I don't think it's been like just formatted or something.
Yes, that was it. And I just realized that late this afternoon.
Okay.
So yes, they have been written. We were just talking about reformatting them,
Yep.
but
Okay.
they have been previously circulated.
August 1st.
I thought that we circulated them at one point,
I
not
don't
looking
think
pretty,
so.
but I can't recall.
No, I don't think we
Yep.
ever did. So I'm
Okay.
going to table August 1st. And if we could shoot those around whenever they're in the right format, that would be great. And then I know September 5th was circulated, so I think it's okay to vote on those tonight. If there is any further amendments or anything, now would be the time to say so. Otherwise, is there a motion to approve the minutes of September 5th, 2024?
I make the motion.
Thank you, Trustee Deborah Williams. Appreciate that.
If you don't
And
come by second.
I hear Jason seconding. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a quick roll call vote to approve those minutes. Trustee Allison,
Yes.
Trustee Briner,
Yes, just real quickly, my name is Kristen with an I at the end, not an E. I just happened to catch that. Sorry.
okay, thank you. We will fix that. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
But yes, otherwise, thank you.
Okay. And Frank, did you, I didn't hear you. Frank, I'm just doing my
Yes.
roll call vote on minutes.
Yes.
And Trustee Williams
Yes.
and Trustee Petracca, yes. So those minutes are approved with, I think we're just fixing Kristen with an I. All right. Thanks, Frank, for
I know,
doing
sorry.
that.
Thank you.
No, we have to have the right spelling.
Well, also because I tend to use the last month's minutes as the style
Oh.
template for the next month's. So if you don't get your name spelled correctly at the first,
It's
the
carrying
error
over.
will continue. So thank
Understood.
you.
No problem. Thank you.
And thank you, Frank, in advance for sending those to the town clerk for posting. All right, moving on to our scheduled appearance this evening. So I just need to issue one correction in introducing our speakers tonight. Community Scale, who was retained for the housing production plan, has a great team, and one of their team members is somebody named Jeff Saucer. And when I saw that Jeff was coming tonight, I immediately thought it was Jeff Saucer. So I apologize that our agenda says Jeff Saucer for Community Scale with Sarah Brent McCoy. Actually, it's Jeff Levine who's here. And Jeff Levine, who's waving, works closely with Community Scale. He actually has his own firm, if I'm, please correct me if I'm misspeaking, but Jeff is the principal at Levine Planning Strategies, is that correct? And works in tandem with Community Scale. And he'll introduce himself in a moment, but I wanted to make sure that that was crystal clear tonight in our recording and in our minutes, that it's actually Jeff Levine and not Jeff Saucer who is here from Levine Planning Strategies, and Sarah Brent McCoy from Community Scale. Nels Nelson, who you've seen before, is out of the country right now, but Jeff came to the community forum that we held with Nels, is very familiar with our housing production plan, as is Sarah Brent, who worked closely with Nels on this. So we're delighted to have you both this evening. We have seen the draft version of this. Most of us were at the housing forum. You sent us the final draft in advance. Thank you for that. And I think it looks really great. It's been a pleasure to work on this with you, and I'm really excited for your presentation tonight. So I'll turn it over to you if you want to just do maybe just a super succinct intro of who you are, just because I don't think everyone here necessarily knows you. So maybe just a super succinct intro, and then we'll dive right into the final draft.
Sure. Thanks, Victoria.
Yeah.
I'm Sarah Brent McCoy. I work with Nels Nelson at Community Scale. I've been working on this project more behind the scenes, but with Nels, the project manager, out of the country this week. I'm here today. I'm a planner with Community Scale and have been working with Nels for a while now. Jeff, I don't know if you want to say anything else.
Sure. I'll just say, as mentioned, I'm Jeff Levine. I'm with Levine Planning Strategies. I do a bunch of work with Community Scale. I love working with these guys. They're really fun and they produce really great reports. So I like working with them. I do planning consulting in New England, mostly Massachusetts and Maine, a little bit of New Hampshire. And I also teach urban planning at MIT. So if I look very academic tonight, I'm actually still in my office. So not normally in such a nice looking room. And it's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you both.
Great. So, Victoria, are you hoping we'll just page through the report and highlight some of the changes since the presentation?
Yes.
Why?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you could just maybe share your screen and go ahead and take us through, that would be great.
And do you want me to go through the whole report just for those that weren't here in July, or?
Yeah, I think you should do the highlights for the folks that weren't here in July, and then, just briefly, things that were changed since then.
Perfect. Okay. Let me. All right. Are you all able to see that?
Yes, we are.
Great. Sure. So we've been working with Jeff Levine on this project. Community Scale has managed most of the. I guess we're the prime on this, but we've worked primarily on some of the front analysis of this presentation, and I'll hand it over to Jeff towards the end to talk through some of the strategies, which I think is a part of this report that's changed most since the July presentation. Excuse me. I'll try to go pretty quickly through all of this. It's a long report.
Sarah Brent, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is there a way for you to do like a full screen or something? It's just a little bit hard to see. It's kind of small.
Sure. Let's. Still sharing?
Yes, it is, and it's much better. Thank you.
Great. All right. So, of course, purpose of the project was to update the HPP. We found through this process that Lancaster's already doing a lot of great stuff that they've taken on in the past 5 years. So this was an opportunity to identify, things that might have changed in the past 5 years, or any remaining gaps. The purpose of a housing production plan is to establish a comprehensive understanding of the town's housing needs relative to its demographics and housing stock. It's required. And it also sets forth goals, which we'll talk through. I think that have been slightly changed since or reworded since the July meeting. There's a bunch of acronyms, so if anybody has any questions about something I say, please let me know. But I'll move past this. So like I said, you already have this strong baseline of housing regulations, programs, and policies to build on, and some changes that you've made since 2019 in particular. Looking at your existing development pipeline, the housing units that have been permitted or sort of are on their way to construction. Otherwise, you see that it's this chart. I'll tell you how to read this chart. The chart has 3 different types of bars. Household growth is in blue, and it's broken up by AMI group. And the blue, you'll see that the household growth is really highest in the 30 to 60% range, and 30 to 60% AMI range, and the above 120% AMI, with some growth in between and very little growth projected in the next 5 years at the under 30% AMI level. You'll see with the red bar, we have cost burdened households. So while there's not much growth at the below 30% AMI level, you do have a good share of those households that are cost burdened. Cost burdened here means spending more than 30% or more of their income on rent or housing costs associated with mortgage and utilities and everything else. And then in the yellow line, you'll see the pipeline of today's housing development. You'll see much of that is happening above at sort of market rate, above 120% AMI, and very little is happening at these other lower income AMI groups where household growth is happening and cost burden needs to be addressed. All right, so going into the housing needs assessment, this includes a bunch of demographic analysis, getting a sense of who's living in Lancaster, what their housing needs are, how these demographics are changing, and how that might correspond to different types of housing needs in the next 5 years. So I'll go very quickly through this. As you'll see, the majority of the 5-year growth is not at that lowest AMI level, but in fact, at the higher AMI levels, such as above 120%. This is projected and sort of following the trends of the past 14 years or so. We found through our projection, looking at not just household growth, but also some of the housing stock you need to replace annually to replace uninhabitable units. So looking at household growth, the units you'll need for household growth, the units you'll need for replacement housing, the units you would need to maintain or increase your vacancy rate to something a bit healthier, and to address overcrowding and substandard housing. In Lancaster, we found very limited overcrowding and substandard housing. So our total number of 295 units in the next 5 years doesn't include any units addressing those. But your vacancy rate is quite low. So a large share of your 295 units needed in the next 5 years is to address that vacancy rate and give you a bit more buffer. Additionally, just a handful of units for replacement housing in addition to those household growth units. I'll breeze through these. You can see your 65 plus cohort is increasing the most as a share of its. So the the y-axis here is the share of the total population. So you'll see that they're quickly becoming your largest share of population. With that big demographic change comes different housing type needs and wants. To get at that, we found that your housing production target for some of these downsizing seniors as part of that that increase in the 65 plus group. You'll have people relocating into things that make more sense for this stage of life, smaller units, and other types of units, we find that you'll need about 35 units in the next 5 years to address some of these demographic changes. I'll briefly go through these, or I'll sort of scan through these, but we can come back to them if anybody would like. You see a large increase in single-person households since 2015, between 2015 and 2022. A large increase in the number of seniors living alone, and some small, modest increase in the number of adults living with their parents, as well as an increase in married couple families. The number of roommate situations is pretty stable, while the number of single parents with children under 18 is smaller than it was in 2015. So you'll see here the size of the red bars shows you the share of each AMI group that's cost burdened or severely cost burdened. Here, severely cost burdened means greater than 50% of the household is spending more than 50% of its income on housing costs. As might be expected, in the lower income groups, you see higher rates of cost burden, and above 120% AMI, you see much more limited cost burden. Mostly detached single family houses, but some, especially for renters, 2 to 4 unit, 5 to 49 unit multifamily structures. You have a lot of you have 71% of your homes are at least 3 bedrooms. As households get smaller to accommodate, in part, that growing senior block, you could this might be something that changes in the future. All right. This is always a helpful chart. It shows over the past, I think since 2016, the difference between the median home price, which is the blue line, and it's inflation adjusted, and the home price that would be affordable to the median income. So we see this dip at some point in 2022 when interest rates went up. After these two lines were pretty much running around the same track. So this is quite a large gap now of more than $200,000. The difference between the median home price and the home price affordable to a median income. Renter costs are also going up. And then here we have more of a sort of profile of the AMI groups, getting a sense of who they are and other dynamics here, like cost burden again, race, household type, age of householder. So now I'll get into the land use analysis. We looked at various development constraints, such as open spaces, floodways, publicly owned land, habitat, sites of activity and use limitations. So I'll just sort of, we have small maps for each of them, or a lot of them, a lot of the indicators we looked at. So open space, water bodies, wetlands, floodways. This is an update, I believe, since the July meeting. We broke out the town land, state-owned land, and Fort Devens here. And we found that there are, and we looked more closely at 2 town-owned land areas, the Kilbourne Road parcels and the 0 Old Union Turnpike parcels, in further detail to consider them for adding additional housing capacity. And we also delivered a larger map where you can look at all of the areas in orange here, and see what's there now. Right. This is just showing your 5 projects. The landing is one of those projects, and we found that it gets you closer to safe harbor, but you're still just a little bit short with 14 units still required to achieve safe harbor.
Brent, I just want to stop right here. When you say we're shorter, are you projecting out to, that statement applies to 2030? Right? Like if we were to build that today, it would put us in safe harbor, but this number, you're using a 2030 denominator. When you say we're 14 units short, it's based off of the 2030 projected denominator?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's
Sorry
all.
about that.
Just making
Yeah.
sure.
We identified a few other opportunities for additional housing, including the former Atlantic Union College, the Sterling-Lancaster Village, and the DCAM 220 Old Common Road. There's the former Atlantic Union College, which could deliver more than 400 units. It could be rezoned to mixed use, mixed income, potentially smart growth 40R, and we outlined some financing mechanisms. Here in Sterling-Lancaster Village, you have a potentially somewhat walkable housing development. You could rezone auto-oriented uses for a more walkable mix, including middle-scale housing, something like 70 to 120 units. There are some hazards to avoid, and then you have the DCAM site, which would be rezoned to allow for multifamily housing. The Mass Development Plan in 2023 proposed about 194 units, both construction and rehab here, and it would be eligible for historic tax credits. All right, getting into the two town-owned land parcels. We have this Kilburn Road parcel. It's about 4 acres, and at 15 units per acre, a sort of maybe 3-story village style. That could be about 60 units. It's not especially walkable, but not especially the walk score isn't horrendous either. So, but to develop this, you would need to improve the frontage along lots 83A, 84A, and 85A. And I can click on the high-res map of the town-owned property if we wanted to get into that as well.
Sarah, Brent, I did have a quick question just to be sure I'm understanding the map correctly on the Kilburn Road parcels. What you have in the yellow hash marks are the 4 acres, right? Or is that whole yellow? I mean, we're not including the FEMA flood zone, right? When you say
Yes.
4 acres, you're talking, and when if we went to a high density, like if we went to a 15 unit per acre, the 60 units, that's all within the hash mark area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's my understanding, given the language could support about 4 acres could support the housing.
Yep. Okay. Well, okay. I'm glad. All right. The flood zone is not in there. Good. Okay.
All right, and then the second piece of town land, looking at this is an update since July. The parcel at 0 Old Union Turnpike. There are about 21 acres there that could support medium density affordable, again at 15 units per acre. That would be something like 315 units.
Yeah. Just a comment. The back of that is in a water protection area, but that's okay. This is the important thing is that it's flagged here. Okay.
Sure. So getting into the goals, a big part of this whole report effort is to establish these goals, which have come out to be to achieve and maintain safe harbor indefinitely. So you're on track, but there may be a shortage in the future that might be short, something of like 14 units. Goal 2, to reduce cost burden by creating housing opportunities that are affordable to median household income, but also those particularly cost burdened AMI groups. Getting to goal 3, providing housing for lower income levels, especially the 0 to 60, where cost burden is really concentrated. As we saw with that chart with the 3 bars, the purple or the red, yellow, and green and blue, you have you're expecting a decent amount of growth in the 30 to 60 AMI group, but the business as usual pipeline is not addressing that group. Goal 4 is to provide housing for special needs populations, people with disabilities, seniors, veterans, and then goal 5 is to use environmentally sustainable methods to meet the housing goals, incentivizing development in the more walkable areas, and ensuring that new development preserves the natural environment. Just very briefly, the summary of our community engagement activities, there was a housing element survey, targeted meetings with the Affordable Housing Trust, stakeholder interviews, and 2 public workshops in June and July. With the survey, we found that the highest community priority was to allow more flexibility for smaller homes and changing housing demands. Some of that we were getting at with some of the demographic changes, and seeing how many of your existing units are 3+ bedrooms, 71%, I think. So some of the ways that you or some of the ways that you see that happen, or some of the ways that you, some of the things maybe making that difficult are the zoning minimum lot size, which creates a stronger incentive for larger homes, and the sort of relative effect of the current zoning, which allows for ADUs and minimal 2-family and multifamily homes. The second highest priority from the community was to respect the physical patterns of the existing neighborhoods. You have these medium density neighborhoods, as well as some rural neighborhoods, but people generally like having that mix, want to retain that mix, as opposed to see larger projects out of context in neighborhoods where that sort of housing doesn't already exist. Sure. So part of the stakeholder interviews were getting a sense of the needs of specific special needs populations. And I'll here we have our sort of housing production strategies matrix. I will pass it over to Jeff Levine, who's really been leading the strategies portion of our work. If you're available to, you can just tell me when to advance the slides.
Okay, that was my question, was should I start sharing? But if you don't mind, I'll just tell you when to change slides. There's only a few. So this is kind of the outcome of all this great analysis that Community Scale did. And it really outlines, based on the goals, 7 basic strategies for this housing reduction plan. 2 are regulatory, as in they involve things like zoning changes, but they don't necessarily cost Lancaster any direct money. The local programs do cost something. It's different how you pay for them, but they're not going to be entirely free. Although it's not always money that would be necessarily changing hands, for example, in Goal 5. So I think we have a slide for each of these, but before we do that, what I like about this matrix is it takes all 7 of the strategies and outlines how it meets the various goals. And all 7 of them are designed to reduce cost burden. 5 of them help maintain or expand your safe harbor. Several of them are focused on low-income housing. Several are focused on special needs housing. And then most of them are focused on sustainable housing, particularly, since a lot of them would be relatively new construction, you could certainly, focus on that. So let me just go through each of them briefly, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. The first one, and this is in several of these, Lancaster is actually kind of pretty far ahead of a lot of places. So it's an interesting question. What do you do when a place is already doing some of the easier stuff? So one of the things that we looked at is based on your existing inclusionary zoning ordinance, which is the type of thing that we usually ask communities to think about creating. I think that once you get to a safe harbor status and you're maybe looking to address different levels of affordability as opposed to the top priority of getting safe harbor status, you should look at your inclusionary zoning ordinance, and you could create 2 tiers of affordability. Right now, it's mostly focused on sort of lower but not super low income households, 80% of it median income or less. And we think that you should maintain that. But you could also create a second option that would allow developers to do fewer units, but do them at a deeper affordability at 60% of AMI. As Sarah Brand's presentation showed, that's a big need in the community. So trying to allow for that in the inclusionary zoning ordinance would be important, especially after you get to safe harbor status, you're not necessarily quite as focused on the number of units. It would be important to think about how many of these units are feasible, because at its core, inclusionary zoning is really an internal subsidy. So the numbers still have to work for the development to happen. You probably would require fewer 60% AMI units than 80%. You could provide, either option for a developer, and they could decide which to do. And how many fewer, that would take a little bit of more analysis. But, the idea that maybe you want fewer but deeper affordable units, or more slightly less affordable but still affordable units, kind of a 2-tier inclusionary zoning approach. Again, going to that next level, a lot of communities don't even have an inclusionary zoning ordinance yet. The next regulatory strategy, if you don't mind changing the slide. This is about zoning that area in South Lancaster at the railroad bridge, really zoning it to be a mixed-use walkable district. We had a good discussion about this at the public meeting in July, and I think there was a little bit of skepticism from some folks about whether it was feasible. I'm a little bit of an optimist. I think this is an area where it is feasible. I think it doesn't hurt to try. I think you could definitely, with the right development partners, you have land there, you have existing infrastructure, and the idea of creating a sort of another village node in the community helps address the idea that we heard from residents, which is, we kind of like our single and 2 family neighborhoods. Let's try to do the development in sort of village centers, and this would to some extent create a new village center. Maybe not all at once, but maybe one piece at a time. So that's the second regulatory strategy that we would propose. Next slide. Moving into local programs. Again, we were very happy to find out that you'd already established an affordable housing trust. One of the things that I spend a lot of time thinking about is A, establishing them, which you've already done, but B, how do you fund them? So we're going to recommend that you look at various funding sources for an affordable housing trust. And some could be a fee in lieu as part of your inclusionary zoning, which some communities like, some communities don't. If you have public surplus properties that maybe aren't appropriate for affordable housing development, but maybe have some secondary use that a developer might use, say lots that are available that really make sense for a single family home, you could sell those and put the sales proceeds, once the net sales proceeds, into the housing trust. And then there's one-time revenues. At the end of the fiscal year, there's often free cash that is unexpended funding that was collected during the year. And communities often have a free cash policy, and we usually recommend that part of that free cash policy involve putting money into the housing trust. So there's no one sort of single thing, but certainly looking at ways to help capitalize a housing trust is a good part of this overall strategy. Next slide. And related to that, we would recommend that Lancaster look at increasing the CPA from 1% to 2% as a first step, and perhaps even to 3% at some point. We would recommend that that increase in funding be used, either go into the housing trust or be used for other affordable housing initiatives directly. If we were to go into the housing trust, you would have to make sure to account carefully for the CPA money versus maybe other money that goes into the trust. You'd almost have two tranches of funding because the CPA funding has different rules than perhaps some of the other funding that might go into the trust. We do recommend this be done sort of strategically, contingent on expanding the town's commercial and industrial tax base, because we're definitely cognizant of the concern of residents about increasing their tax burden. But we think there is an opportunity here. It's not a huge increase, and it really would help it would help Lancaster really sort of be able to do more of the housing production it wants to do. Next strategy. Sarah Brennan talked about this a little bit, but looking at town land disposition for affordable housing, I think the usual strategy for this is to issue a request for proposals for development of these parcels, provide all the information you can publicly, and let developers sort of kick the tires and come back with potential proposals. These can be fairly open-ended requests, really almost a request for qualifications. That can be more specific if you want. But usually I find a sort of a looser RFQ helps, and you can see if there are nonprofit or for-profit developers that want to meet the affordable housing objectives for these sites and have some thoughts about how they could do infill housing that sort of addresses neighbors' concerns, but also produces the amount of housing at the affordability levels you're looking for. Looking at this site, I have a lot of sort of brainstorm ideas about what you might do with it, but really a developer who does this all day and knows their financing sources could do a better job than me, like thinking through how it could be set up. And I think there are opportunities here to do affordable housing and mixed income housing with very little impact to the neighborhood around it. On the next slide. Another issue that came up as part of this process was the capacity of public utilities on Main Street, concerns that there might be constraints on water and sewer capacity. So looking at ways to increase that capacity to allow, again, more infill development in the areas that are away from neighborhoods and in the more commercial and mixed use areas that will require potentially additional capacity. So working with your public works departments and the folks who run the public utilities and getting a sense of what the limits are and how to expand them. That also could potentially be funded through some of these other sources like the CPA if tied in with housing production. But it also just has benefits for existing residents and businesses. No one likes it when there's a huge rainstorm and their basement floods. So this could also help everybody. Next, and I think it's the last strategy 7. Really looking at both the DCAM property and the Atlantic Union College site. I know these aren't town-owned, and we heard some feedback in July about the fact that there are some thoughts about, maybe the Atlantic Union College site has some plans for redevelopment. Again, I remain a bit of an optimist. I think if Lancaster puts forth, the zoning and the vision for these sites that the community wants to see, that doesn't hurt. You might not get it, but you certainly won't get it if you don't sort of try. So looking through design guidelines, what kind of zoning overlays we might be able to do more mixed income housing, looking at incentives potentially if that's something that the community is interested in, but really sort of setting forth a positive vision for both of these sites. I remember looking at the DCAM vision for their site, and it's a nice vision. I actually think you could probably do more units on that site under some scenarios than that vision. Although even that vision is a great sort of step forward in terms of meeting your affordability goals. I think that's the last strategy. So I'd hand it back to Sarah Brent, and thanks very much.
Sarah Brent, can we open this up for some comments and feedback?
Sure. Yes. Sorry, I had lost the meeting window behind the presentation. But yes, we're all done with our presentation, and looking forward to your questions and comments.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That was a great overview of the housing production plan, and we can see what was updated since July. So thank you so much for that, both Sarah, Brent, and Jeff. Does anyone, I have a couple of comments, but I don't need to jump right in with my thoughts. Does anyone from the trust, or Brian Keating is here, our planning director? Do you all have any thoughts or comments or feedback before I provide a couple thoughts?
I do not.
Thank you, Jason.
Nothing at this
Thought it
time.
was a good job and thorough.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was a very good presentation. I actually had read it a couple days ago when I first got it. I like the direction we're going.
Good. Okay.
And sorry, just having been at the July meeting, yeah, I like the updates too.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Kristen, Frank, Jason, Brian. Yes.
Yeah, I just like to add that we may have some synergies with our new Economic Development Committee. 'Cause I think one of our stated goals or on our agenda will be focusing on that downtown village that Jeff has talked about. I'm really happy that he did that, because that's something that I think is a real opportunity. And for the Affordable Housing Trust and for the Economic Development Committee to be leveraging each other's energies. Because I think the village mode, talks about, whether it's form-based or other types of codes that allow us to build up and have, ground floor economic opportunities and upper floor housing. So I think that's exciting that we can leverage that in the housing production plan.
Thank you, Brian. I totally agree with you. I'm wondering if, to kind of formalize what Brian is expressing, which I think is spot on, could we, I'm putting this out there to both our consultants and our group here, the team, and to Brian, would we like to formalize that in the housing production plan before sending it to the select board and planning board? Add verbiage, perhaps under the, where we talk about that South Lancaster revitalization, working for the housing to not be done sort of in a void, but working closely with our friends at the Economic Development Committee. I think I'd love to capture what Brian is expressing in the plan and formalize it and have it be stated as a goal that the housing should be, that we should be working in concert. There are areas where it makes sense to be working in concert with our colleagues at the Economic Development Committee.
I mean, I would just like, and I don't think but I do want to get Jean Riches as the chair of the Economic Development Committee. We talk about it at the meeting, so I know that she's on board with it, but just to make sure that I'd like it to have it be her, come from her, as opposed to me as a mere staff person.
Is it something you think you could do between now and when this goes to the select board?
Yeah, which is, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I can tomorrow. She's in Disney. She's away. She may be back, but I will check her. I'll try her tomorrow. She was
Awesome.
away.
Awesome. I love it. I think it's great. I think it helps bring this to reality, to have, to have housing and economic development work together where it makes sense. So awesome. I had a couple comments. One is that I just want to be certain that we're using 170 units as our current SHI. I think we've been over this before, but I think I saw it might have been on the web page. I think I saw a lingering 171 someplace. I just want to be super consistent that it's 170. And I know why that the 171 had to do with a small thing in our downtown that the developer has not yet submitted his final building permit. So we don't actually have for the SHI it's Mr. Safi, Brian. We're still waiting on Mr. Safi's one affordable unit. So that's not in our SHI.
There was a sighting in the planning office earlier this week. So
there was a sighting. Oh, yay. All right. But no submittal, right? No submittal? No. No, okay.
Still looking through building permit issues.
Okay, so we're at 170. We just want to, if you wouldn't mind going through and making sure that that web page that you created for this, which is awesome, by the way, I'm going to toot their horn for a minute, that we didn't just get a housing production plan. We also have a web-based executive summary that's interactive and great for our residents and partners, developers, anyone to look at, because it gives you the executive summary with links to do a deeper dive into different topics. But between that and the report, they should say 170 consistently. That's what we have, is 170 units. So that was one piece of feedback. Another piece of feedback was just, I noticed that you refer to the 2020 the census data, like the extrapolated 2022, sorry. You use the extrapolated 2022. I think it's in the report, which is fine. It's just that the state is consistently using the 10-year census data. I have no problem with you using the 2022 extrapolated. My only question is, are you using, and I'm sorry that it's so like detailed, but do you know if that's year-round housing units that you're using? Because that's what the state uses. I just want to make sure that we're doing apples to apples. When you talk about, you say that we're at 3,053 as of 2022. Is that year-round housing units? Because we actually do have like some cottages and things that are in some of the numbers, but the state will only use the year-round. In our 2020 number, denominator is year-round, and that's what they use statewide.
Yes. My understanding is that seasonal is classified differently.
And not included in your 2022 number, correct?
That's right.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for that. Did you have Neck Road in the pipeline? Do you need to look back in the pipeline for a second? We have this project that's on the precipice of permitting, and I just want to make sure you had it in the pipeline. I'm sorry, I don't have the pipeline that you're using right in front of me.
No worries. Sorry, which one would that be?
13 Neck Road. It's at the beginning of
Neck Farm.
Yeah, that's it. Same thing.
Okay.
You have it in the pipeline. It's in there.
Yes.
Okay. And how
On the
many
pipeline.
units? How many units did you put it down for?
11.
Brian, is that what we're at right now?
Yeah, that'll be, yeah, so rental, so it'll be 11. No, I'm sorry. Right now, you need to adjust that down to 10.
Yeah.
But what could be a little bit more exciting is that we are now have 2 units at 60%, which Brent and Jeff were pointing out of the.
Yeah, I saw that. We'll talk about that later on tonight in our agenda. That is exciting. And they dropped a unit out of the whole project, so it's 10 now. So that's so Sarah Brent can update. Okay, so it's 10. All right, and if you could just make sure, I don't know if this was on the webpage or in the report, but Cottage Lane is built. It's not a pipeline project. It's built. It's in our SHI. I thought I saw it lingering. I know I've said that before, but I thought I saw it lingering somewhere as a pipeline thing. It's out of the ground, built, constructed, people are moving in.
Okay.
So just make sure that nowhere should that be in a pipeline, like on the webpage or on the, it's already built.
Are all the units built, or is it partially built out?
It's all built.
It's all built. Okay.
They're like fine tuning landscaping type stuff now, right, Brian? I mean, it's all out of the ground.
Yeah, I can confirm with Mike tomorrow. There were some issues with the building, that's for sure. But as far as the units coming online, I believe that's the case.
Yeah. And well, I guess the real benchmark is that they're in our SHI. We've received them into what the state calls Lancaster's SHI. So they're on our official Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities SHI. All right. And my last comment is that under the goals where you cite the regulatory changes, the 2 goals for regulatory, I think it's fantastic that you have the rezone for South Lancaster, but I would also include the rezone for DCAM. And I don't know if you want to lump those, like put them together as the second goal, or if you want to have a third goal just for DCAM rezoning. But while we're talking about rezoning South Lancaster, we should also be talking about rezoning DCAM.
Well, the rezone at DCAM could be not so much it's an iPod overlay. So
iPod or
that-
40R, maybe. It could go 40R. I mean, I don't think.
Well, right, but I think right now it's leaning iPod, but that could change because it's way early in the process.
I just think it needs to be cited that we can't do what we're talking about at DCAM under the current code.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And we'll confer about whether it should be a separate strategy or combined with that.
Okay, thank you. Those are my comments. And I had, just on the map that we didn't look at, that the link that you provide that's like the high resolution town-owned land map. This is really nitpicky, but you have a label on the middle school, the current middle school, which is great. But there's also a label that says middle school on a former middle school building on that whole campus area in the center of town. So I think you need to take that one off so it doesn't cause confusion or people aren't commenting or obsessing like that's not a middle school.
Sure.
Those are our town offices and library complex. So I would change that to town offices / library, something like that. And it gives folks another visual marker for reading the map. And then there's just a typo on the webpage. Available is misspelled on page 1.
Oh, great. Okay.
But
Thank
I
you
didn't
for
see
the
any
close
other
reading.
thing.
And just real quick, Victoria, I don't want just going back to South Lancaster Village. That would also include a lot of work with the planning board and the zoning board, as well as the select board to get that all off. So I think it'll be a all hands on deck across the board effort.
Sure. And I think that Brian, that's good to point that out. And maybe that goes in there in the verbiage that those are, like you say, all hands on deck kind of, team approach, team Lancaster approach, that it's not one group. It's a cohesive,
Right.
various boards working together to make it happen. So, all right. I don't have any other changes. I do think that we need to vote as a housing trust to move this to the planning board and select board. I know they've carved out time for a joint session on October 21st to have a presentation and vote. It's a requirement that both planning board and select board approve a housing production plan, and then it goes to the state. The state has to approve it as well. And then it's once it's approved, it's valid for 5 years. It is a requirement for safe harbor status. Sometimes that's forgotten. We think it's just about getting the units built, but unless you have a valid current approved housing production plan, you will not get safe harbor status. So anyway, in the interest of moving it to planning board and select board, is there a motion to approve, endorse this housing production plan contingent on the changes cited this evening at this meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Deb. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Trustee Allison?
Yes.
Trustee Briner?
Yes.
Secretary and Trustee Frank Streeter?
Yes, with the caveat that I'm voting only as a member of the trust and not as a member of the planning board, and that those roles are independent.
May that please be reflected in our meeting minutes. Thank you, Frank. Trustee Williams?
Yes.
Chair and trustee Petracca, yes, so the motion passes. Thank you both, Sarah, Brent, and Jeff. We will see you at the select board and planning board meeting, or whomever represents community scale that evening. Jeff, will you be joining community scale?
I'm going to try. I have a potential conflict, but I'm going to see if I can move it. So hopefully.
Okay, well, thank you again. It's been a true pleasure to work with both of you as well as Nels. And I will be at that meeting on the 21st. If you could make these changes and send us the updated version, I would greatly appreciate it so I can just read it once again before the 21st. Is there anything else this evening for community scale and living strategies?
No, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. And I know Brian will be in touch with you as well about that meeting on the 21st. I don't have anything else. I just want to thank you again. All right. Feel free to stay if you want, but we're going to move on in our agenda. If not, have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
All right. Moving on. Number 4 is the creation of a dedicated trust account. So I circulated something we received from Kelly Dolan. Kelly and Kate have been working on getting our account set up. This is basically so that we can actually receive funds. So we have to have a dedicated account within the town. As it was pointed out this evening, there will probably be 2 accounts, one for CPA funds, which have their own rules, and one for things like payment in lieu, or if, Kate mentioned perhaps a percentage of free cash, if there's ever a surplus of free cash. But that would go in a different account, all under affordable housing production. Did you all get a chance to look at the memo or the email from Kelly? It looked like there were 2 questions. One was Kate was asking us, what, if anything, have we adopted in this vein? The only thing we've adopted is our charter, which states that we can have an account, but we haven't done anything as far as creating it. And then the second thing she asked us to do was look at a link to Mass General Law that she provided. I'm not comfortable tonight without Kelly here. I actually, you know what? I neglected to mention earlier, and when I did roll call attendance, Kelly is at an MRPC meeting tonight, so she cannot be with us. I would rather table this item until Kelly can be here. She's an ex officio trustee and working with Kate on the creation of this. I would ask that everyone look at that link to Mass General Law that she provided, because the question was whether we would like to be under the town's, I almost want to say jurisdiction, or I think it would require approval for expenditure, approval from possibly select board, possibly Kate, I'm not sure. If we want that kind of oversight or not. I think we need to have Kelly here when we have that conversation.
My only comment about that would be that the town manages funds that are discretionary for others. For instance, the town manages funds for the library, but serves effectively as a custodian for those funds. So once things are budgeted for the library that come through the town, that's done. So it would seem that this would be similar because, for instance, once the CPA funds are voted, there is no further vote or approval needed for the trust to then spend them. So I would think that would be the sort of account you would be looking at, rather than trying to create another level of a layer of things to deal with.
Well stated.
We try.
This is also gearing up for something at the spring town meeting. We talked about enacting something that's allowed under CPA. Both Affordable Housing Trust and Conservation Commissions can have their dedicated funds transferred over so that when an opportunity arises for either housing or open space protection or conservation land, you don't have to call a town meeting to go get the approval to spend the money. And so we're putting that onto the warrant for the spring, but if the town votes to do this, we need to have an account to receive the CPA funds. So that's one reason why it's important for us to set this account up. But is the trust comfortable tabling this until Kelly's at our meeting? And possibly Kate. Actually, Kate offered to come in this evening, but we had this other presentation going on. And she was only available at the beginning of our meeting because she had to go someplace else after. So I'd like to table it until our next meeting and have Kelly and or Kate here to talk about that. Yeah.
That's
All right. Okay, good. And that those two agenda items go together, 4 and 5, the transfer of community preservation funds to Affordable Housing Trust. I think we can couple those and discuss them at our next meeting with Kelly and Kate. I don't have, on number 6, I don't have updates to our SHI pipeline. Under the 40-hour smart growth district, there's nothing new in the court wranglings between the two investors. Neck Farm Estates, though, does have an update. Brian, would you like to share with us what the ZBA did at the last meeting? I think the hearing is now closed.
Yes, the public hearing was closed on the 19th, and I don't want to say it is hoped, but the intention will be for a decision, the ZBA to render a decision on October 24th. And all, it seems to be moving in that direction. So, and again, I can't speak for the ZBA. If I was an independent observer looking at all the meetings and observing the meetings and hearing the discussion, it would appear at this point that it would be a positive decision. Take that for what it is. So the latest on the 13 and what we're doing, what the board is doing now is considering individually, of course, not to violate open meeting laws, a set of approximately 60 conditions that that the attorney that the town procured for this to guide the board through the 40B process. Conditions that would ensure that the outcomes and benefits do accrue to the town as intended. So these are a lot of boilerplate. Everything has to be deed restricted, but also some site design issues. The width of the I can actually pull them up if you guys are right, because they were discussed at a public hearing, so it's not privileged information. If we won't go through all of them. Oh, do I need to share my screen first? Let's see. All right, let's see. Yeah, so share screen. Okay. So I am going to.
Kristen, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. For your benefit, this is 13 Neck Road, also known as Neck. The project's also known as Neck Farm.
Okay.
It's the it started out as, I think, originally 13 units, and now it's down to 10.
Okay.
No, I think it was May started. No, I think it was always
11. The most current one was 11.
There was 11 in 3 buildings, and a lot of the pushback from both the butters, also members on the board, that it was the density just seemed
density. Yeah. Okay.
However, the density is not a factor at the state, and but they so as to say, I think the developers were very cooperative with the board and with neighbors to get that density down, and again, I think the fact that they offered to build, reduce the number of affordable units from 3 to 2, but the 2 units would be at 60%, which is, that's a good thing. Not many
for developer, yeah.
The entire SHIs are 80%.
Mhm.
The only
Um,
thing I would, yeah,
Mhm.
yep, no, it's great. It is great that it's gone to 60. The only thing is it's a numbers game and we're trying to get into
Yeah.
safe harbor. So we
Mhm.
lost a unit in essence, but it is great to have 2 units at 60% instead of 80%.
Are you seeing my screen now?
No,
Oh,
no, this project just, while you're doing that, Brian, just like 2 or 3, probably at least 3 years ago, this same developer brought a proposal for that site in, and it looked completely different. And I think that's when it was 13 units,
Mhm.
but it was not a farm approach. It wasn't like to look like farm buildings. It looked totally different. And he went back to the drawing board, hired a different architect, and came up with this farm building concept. And it's now, as Brian said, 2 buildings. It's like a giant farmhouse that's units inside of it, and then
Yes.
a barn building. And it's 10 units total. And by eliminating one of the structures, there used to be a third structure, kind of like a cottage structure.
Mhm.
Eliminated that, and it allowed him to push this barn back away from the street. So now we have much better traffic visibility, which was a major public concern. So
Yeah.
I do agree with Brian. The developer has worked with public feedback, both on the overall design of it, what it looks like from 3 years ago, to the density, to the traffic visibility, seeing around the corners and so forth.
Mhm.
So all of that's
Good.
Yeah,
Who-
good collaboration.
Who is the developer? If you said, I didn't hear
it's a private investor, actually.
Okay.
Hancock Associates is the engineer.
you. Mhm.
I will poke around and get the.
Oh, it's
the
not big. I just was curious.
It's
kinda
John
quiet.
Cherubini, though. I mean,
Yes,
John Cherubini is the
thank you.
owner.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's.
It's John Cherubini.
I can never remember that name.
That's okay. We don't have to go through all the conditions, but I did have a question. As one of the conditions, have we asked for local preference so that Lancaster residents and teachers and employees of the Neshoba School District, which Lancaster is a part, that they have first dibs?
They did that on the cottages. They had that lottery.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so I think,
that
most
in here?
applications, whoever does the fair housing marketing plan will almost always apply for that 70% local preference. And that
Mhm.
local preference includes those categories that you mentioned, Victoria. So
Is it in here as a stipulation that we?
I'm not sure.
It should be in the comprehensive permit that they will seek the local preference so that we can protect the residents that they can have and the employees of our school district.
I just saw it on number 9. Go back to number 9, I think. Right there.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go.
Yep.
There it is. Eagle Eyes Deb.
Perfect. There you
found
go.
it. Thank you, Deb.
Good
I love
catch.
it. To the maximum extent allowed by law, preference for the affordable unit shall be given to qualified Lancaster residents, employees of the town of Lancaster, employees of businesses looking. This is, I think, the same verbiage that we got for Cottage Lane. Households with children attending Lancaster Public Schools. Awesome. There it is. It's already
Yeah.
in there. Great.
Yeah. So most of the time you apply for the 70%, and that's the maximum.
Okay. And
pretty
I had
standard.
one other picky question. Somebody flagged in town, do we say we want these units affordable in perpetuity? We don't have
Yeah.
an expiration
Oh,
date,
no,
right?
40, yes, I think that's more and more the case. Let's see here.
It should be. If it says expiration date, it's no bueno, because we don't want to go through all this work and then have them fall off the wagon in X number of years. It should be in there. Do you want to scroll through quickly just to ease
Just
our
back in
minds
the
that it's in there?
thing.
We have there's one site in Lancaster that has an expiration date, and I don't know why it was negotiated. This is like going back many, many moons ago. I don't know why it was ever negotiated that way. But it's an old project, a long time ago, but everything going forward needs to be in
The
perpetuity.
the affordable units shall be reserved in
Awesome.
perpetuity for rent to eligible applicants.
Those
Yeah,
were
I
my
think
two
that's more and more the
questions.
case where years and years ago, it was harder to get developers to sign on to this, so they were allowed that 30-year, 15-year, 30-year, but now as the years went on and the affordable housing advocacy lobby, it's more and more the case. I think it's very rare now that they're not in perpetuity.
It says 80% though, is it supposed to be 60 or is that just something that?
Oh,
Well,
shit, eagle eyes again. That is great catch. Look at that. Annual income may
agreement-
not exceed 80% and they're supposed to be 60.
Or just updated, yeah.
50% of the area median income, if applicable, within the per the guidelines. Sure, I don't think Adam would have missed that because that was a big.
Yeah, but we said, I heard
I'll make
60
sure
tonight.
I'll make sure that it's.
Yeah, maybe it
I'll
doesn't need to be
double-check that and
changed.
make sure that
Yeah,
those-
maybe that's how it's worded. I don't know, but just,
I mean, I don't think they can ever go right. Well, the thing is, it's either 25% of the housing units must be affordable at 80%, or 20% of the units at. So or maybe it is 50%, but I think it's 60%. I'm almost sure. I don't think it's 50%.
How do we pin this down? Are you going to write to Adam Costa?
Yes, and I'll get you the answer tomorrow.
Okay, that works.
I can
And
just look-
Brian, would you mind, this looks like the draft conditions could you send that to me and I'll circulate it to the Housing Trust so we can have a look at it? Or is that
Sure.
not allowed?
Well, I mean, I'd rather, I don't want, I just gotta be careful because it is being deliberated by the zoning board.
Right.
These kinds of beings, I don't know how much, I mean, they were discussed at the public hearing, so I don't think that they're.
Well, because
but-
because it touches on affordable housing, I think the Affordable Housing Trust should just look it over in case there's anything else like what Deb has caught. Just so I'd rather get this flushed out now before a vote than they sign the thing and then we go, wait.
Okay, yeah,
Since it's affordable housing, I think it's germane to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay, yes, and
We
I will.
won't like circulate it to the world.
Yeah, hang out on the corners and start because you can't deliberate it. It's
Right.
outside the public hearing, so these can't be deliberated in a group. They really need to be only.
I just want to make sure we're dotting all our i's and crossing all our t's before this gets signed and recorded at the registry. So
Okay, all right. So I'll do it on the promise that you're not going to be discussing them amongst each other.
No, it's just that if like Deb made a really good catch.
No, that's really good. But
yeah, she made an awesome catch, and I don't know if she might make another awesome catch. So,
Brian,
yeah, Frank.
You might want to ask Rob Alex before you do it.
Right, and
it's his board, it's
Yes.
his orders.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Frank is 100% correct. Please confer with Rob first, and if subject to Rob approving, the Affordable Housing Trust would like to review it.
Right. Okay.
Thanks. Yep. Good point, Frank. I appreciate that.
Well, good point to getting the trust to review it in the first place.
Yep.
Madam Chair.
Teamwork. Team Lancaster.
All right. So we don't have to go through all these, but
No.
okay. Let me stop.
No, if you send it to us, if Rob says okay. All right. And then next was Laurel Hill. I don't think anything is happening. We're still waiting on our two units. Yes, Frank.
An alert Lancaster resident flagged for me that all of the lots there are back in tax title. As of the list that just came out probably last week.
Yes, I noticed it.
So I'm not totally sure the implication of that for the developer, but I can certainly be assured that if the updated bylaw is passed at town meeting, that things will be on a hard pause until that's addressed.
Frank is referring to one of the articles that says until developers pay all back taxes, we don't do business.
Well, just on that note there, and again, I'm not advocating one way or the other, but the teams are working together to get the key here is to get the road constructed. Once the road is constructed, the utilities are buried and the road is constructed, the base course is put on the road. And if the planning board so thinks everything, according to our consultants, everything is as is in compliance, they can start selling lots. So then they'll be able to pay their taxes. That is, something to consider, and that is moving along apace. The road construction is starting.
With taxes owed?
Well, I don't know how else he can pay his taxes.
Well, I mean, so the building permits were already issued, is what you're saying?
No, I'm saying he can, no, there's no building going on. He can't do any building, but I'm
Oh.
saying, but he can start maybe marketing some of these lots, or get some revenue going so that he can pay his taxes and get, so there's no building permits can happen.
Okay.
But
I see.
but he
Okay.
can selling lots.
Okay, this is kind of going outside of the limits of, I guess, the Affordable Housing Trust, but, okay. So that's the update on Laurel Hill. Hawthorne Hill, I heard at the last planning board meeting that I heard, I'm blanking, who was the developer,
Jim Whitney?
Jim Whitney, thank you. All I could think of was Nicole Ferguson, his daughter. Jim Whitney expressed that in order to meet the requirement for inclusionary zoning, the 2 units, that they are now at this point intending to build the 2 units, not do the payment in lieu.
So Victoria, let me comment on that briefly. As
Yeah.
you pointed out, that technically is the permit granting authority's sole discretion. So I think it would be prudent for the trust to come up with some standards that they might use to say to the planning board, we want to see a payment in lieu here, we want to see units here. I mean, it would seem to me that there are some projects where you absolutely want the developer to include a bunch of affordable units in the project, and there are others where a payment in lieu might be more suitable. And I think that that's the sort of thing that the trust might wish to consider, just because I'm sure the planning board would look at the trust's recommendation as one of the critical factors in determining what to do. And this is not mature yet, in the sense that that subdivision still has a fair amount of work to do.
So I guess I need to, maybe I need to look at the inclusionary zoning bylaw. Certainly yes, you're correct. There is language in there that there is a special permit granting authority for inclusionary zoning depending on the project. So in this case, the planning board. I guess I'm not sure. I just don't know the answer. I'm not 100% sure if we can dictate whether it's payment in lieu or units. I thought that the developer indicated its preference. I don't know. I just don't know the answer, Frank, if we can actually require a payment in lieu.
The trust cannot. The trust
No, not the
cannot
trust.
require it.
No, the special permit granting authority.
I believe that based on the reading of the statute, which you actually encouraged me to do a few weeks back, I believe the planning board actually can.
Okay.
And so at that point, certainly having the trust recommendation,
Yeah.
whatever that might be, would
Yep.
be appropriate. And
Yeah.
honestly, from a variety of developers, they would probably be happy to say the trust recommends what I'm trying to do here.
Right. Okay.
So I do
think
speak as
that
to what those standards should be, but I just think that if this is going to start being an issue, the trust should try to get ahead of it.
Right.
Are you saying
Point well
the
taken.
statute, the state statute, or the local bylaw?
Local bylaw.
Okay, I didn't get that reading, but I'll review it and see if I can.
I will be the first person out there to say, often wrong, but seldom in doubt. So
right,
definitely, follow up. But I believe that was what I read.
Okay.
But
Brian, let's you and I have a look at it and circle back around and with Frank, and because certainly, I mean, we would probably prefer a payment in lieu. I think the price point of those homes is such that to give them to an income eligible person at that rate, at that price, like doing the calculation and, they get the home for the X dollar amount or whatever, to furnish that home and heat that home and take care of that home is not necessarily a great service. I think we could do a lot more
With
with
the-
a payment in lieu.
with the $2 million, that would be
Right,
for the
exactly.
both 80% of both of those units. Yeah.
Right. So I think the first step is for us to review that bylaw and see if I say we, it's actually if the planning board at the special permit granting authority, in this case, the planning board has the authority to decide what, and so we'll look at that.
I would say that even if it doesn't, and it turns out that it does not, it would still be good for the trust to have an opinion in terms of what it would like to see. And because I think that would factor in to, any set of hearings, and more to the point, may factor in with a number of developers who might or might not be indifferent, and the trust's opinion might or might not be dispositive.
And I think it is good practice for the trust in general. I'm not singling out Hawthorne Hill in any way, but I think it is good practice for the trust to formalize its opinion with a vote at the trust and then submit it so that we're providing that to the boards. Number 5, this property rehab. So I heard you this is 197 South Main Street. Brian, I heard you say that Mr. Safi was in the office recently. That's great news. Haven't heard from him in quite a while. So maybe we're inching our way towards the interior building permit. He has an exterior building permit, but interior and actual delivery of units and the affordable unit. So, all right. I don't have any updates to existing SHI. No correspondence. I don't see anyone here for public comment. I don't have any new business. Stop me if I'm going too fast. Brian, yes.
Yeah. So there was an issue, and maybe Jason can chime in on this as well. Unfortunately, we may have lost a unit from our SHI.
What?
We may have lost a unit.
Oh, I heard you, but I guess I was just saying, what, like, huh? How does this
Oh,
happen?
I thought you were aware of this
No.
situation. Okay. So there was a foreclosure. I don't know if I disclosed where it is. I don't even know exactly where it is. I know what development, but there was a foreclosure of a previous a unit that was built as and was deed restricted the whole bit. But it went into foreclosure, and the town accepted. It just went through as I don't know. It was foreclosed upon. It was settled. The town and the affordable housing owner both received payments to mitigation, and but as a result, we lost the affordable housing unit.
I'm sorry, I know nothing about this.
Oh, you didn't?
When did all this happen? An affordable housing unit, and nobody reached out to the Affordable Housing Trust? What?
Well, we're telling you about it. This didn't happen like last month. This was just like maybe earlier this week or last week. But it came from the developer, not the developer.
Where is this? What project? What address?
I can say, online. Can we talk more about it offline?
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, we might be able to use, I don't know, there are ways we could.
I don't think there's anything that anyone can do about it now. It's a done deal. They sold it, and it's now It was sold at a market rate. So, and there's new homeowners in this unit. So it's a done deal.
So our
But
SHI has changed. We're not at 170, we're at 169.
I believe that will be the case, yes.
So that should have been in the, okay, I mean, that's germane to the housing production plan too.
Yes.
I wish we had known when we had folks on, but we can.
No, I didn't. I just
Yeah.
not sure how much I can. I know this is the Affordable Housing Trust. It doesn't look like there are other people online here, but it is going to be a recording available, and I just want to bring it to your attention. I can give you more of the details.
Well, I mean, the SHI list is a public document, so the addresses of the affordable units in the town are on the Affordable Housing Trust website.
Yeah.
Although we don't say like at Blue Heron or someplace, we don't list exactly which units. We just say if it's a development, it doesn't say.
Okay. We'll just
I mean,
say
you could say like it's a unit at Blue Heron, or it's a unit at.
Yeah.
Is it within a complex like that?
Yes.
Oh, so what's the name of if it's a mixed
Blue
income?
Heron.
Oh, it's Blue Heron.
Heron.
Okay, so we lost a unit at Blue Heron, but here's the thing. Those units have a monitoring agent. So all affordable units in Massachusetts are matched with a monitoring agent, and the monitoring agent for Blue Heron, I believe, is CHAPA. So was the CHAPA agent part of this whole thing? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel better that the monitoring agent was a part of that, because their whole reason to be around is to prevent this. So they run around trying to find another income eligible household. So
Which they did. That all of that happened. Yes.
And they couldn't, despite our housing crisis, find another income eligible household. Wow. I mean, I'm just kind of surprised that with all the folks needing housing in Massachusetts, that we couldn't find another income eligible.
Yeah, it was the unit went through all the fair housing marketing plan, all the laws that would be applicable if it was a first time unit coming online. They did all of that apparently. At least that's what the documentation is showing.
So that would have all started a while ago, which means that, I mean, we should have been notified a long time ago, like months ago, that.
I didn't know about this until last week when I don't know what happened before that. All I know is this.
Was it on a select board agenda?
I don't know.
This is something feels like it didn't happen.
Victoria?
Yeah.
Victoria? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah, enlighten us.
I don't know anything about this.
Here's the weird part. I recall vaguely hearing something about that it was happening some months ago, I thought, but I have no recollection as to where I might have heard it. And it might have come through the fact that my wife and her late father own a unit at Blue Heron. But I don't recall anything beyond that, and it certainly was not a discussion here. I do think it's really important that the trust find out about this sort of stuff. Even if there's nothing we can do, at least to know. I mean, look at poor Victoria. Her head's about to explode.
My head's going to explode.
Justifiably so.
We work so hard to get our units going up, and to have a unit fall off is like, it's a big deal. And typically what happens is that these units actually go to the select board if the town receives correspondence that there's a unit available, and then it shows up on a select board agenda and there's discussion. And I usually go in there and talk about how we need to find an income eligible family. CHAPA or whoever is assigned to that particular project. Sometimes it used to be DHCD, or now Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities is the monitoring agent for some sites. There are different monitoring agents out there, but they start a whole concerted effort to find another income eligible household so that the unit remains, on the list. The other thing is, I don't think we would have lost one, Brian, because the state, that used to be an issue if it was sold to a non-income eligible or rented to a non-income eligible household. The state changed the law on this so that if after 90 days you cannot locate someone who's income eligible, which is like hard to believe you can't, but let's say you can't, it actually remains deed restricted affordable such that it can never be sold. So like when this new owner comes in, they can never sell it above it never reverts to market rate. It never reverts. It used to in years past, and it was a problem, and it would fall off the wagon. The state changed that law for this very reason. And so if you don't have an income eligible renter or owner after 90 days, you can sell it at market rate. I mean, no, you cannot sell it at market rate. You sell it at that price and it stays as an affordable unit forever, and it doesn't fall off the town's SHI.
Right, but my sense was that this is not like something. This has been ongoing for some time, and that I think this was something that had come about before those changes were made, when that 90-day rule was still applicable.
So it's Blue Heron. I'll call Chapa tomorrow and get to the bottom of it, but fingers crossed we didn't actually lose a unit, because
I hope not, but I don't see it. Okay, but all right.
okay.
I mean, we can, if you call me tomorrow, I can get you somehow dig up what I have on it, what I was given and what I read,
Can you forward that to me? Yeah, just forward it to me and we'll take a look at it. But yeah, I mean, the housing trust is like, doesn't want to have all these meetings to find out we lost. I really hope we didn't lose a unit, but thank you for bringing it up. Otherwise I wouldn't have known. Jason didn't hear anything about it at the select board.
Again, I think payment may have happened a few years ago, maybe before Jason came on, maybe before, I don't know. It was something that kind of happened quickly over a day or so. And it was almost like a fait accompli. And I didn't know about it. Kate didn't know about it. It just kind of came across our desk all of a sudden when they were trying to close on this unit. And this came to light, and they were looking for confirmation. And then when we looked into it and dug into it, we found that, it's already a done deal. So no one in town knew about it. I mean,
definitely forwarded.
Someone at some point may have known about it before the Affordable Housing Trust came into being. That's my sense. But now it just reappeared as, now that they found a market rate buyer, and they were trying to close on this unit, and this issue came up in the settlement and the liens or whatever came up when you're purchasing a property, and they were they chose to reach out to the town to confirm that this was the case. Because I didn't know anything about it, and I believe Kate didn't know anything about it until now. So like I said, I think this has all happened. I don't know the time frame, but it seems to me that it happened before we had an Affordable Housing Trust, and maybe before any of the current select board members were seated. I don't know what their time, how long they've been on, but we can get you the details. We can look at it.
I mean, definitely send me the details. I want to find out if it's one of the if it is one of our 170 in our SHI. I'm hoping it's not, but we'll talk about it some more tomorrow. But thank you, Brian, for bringing it to our attention. It certainly is a big deal, because if our SHI has gone down, we need to update community scale right away. And so
just wasn't sure that I was thinking of it when they were doing their presentation. I said, well, just let me wait for a more advantageous moment here to bring this up.
Okay, well, thanks for bringing it up. And I mean, anything that has to do with a unit potentially coming off our SHI, definitely reach out to the Housing Trust, because we can, our first port of call should be the monitoring agent. If for
Well,
this
like I said, yeah, but it had already been through her, and that's the
Right,
first.
right.
look.
And I'm very intrigued. I can't wait to sink my teeth into this one and look at it. Sounds really interesting. Okay, thanks, Brian. Anything else under new business tonight? No? Okay. Our communications, our next Affordable Housing Trust meeting will be held on Thursday, November 7th at 7 o'clock by a Zoom, and then on Thursday, December 5th at 7 o'clock by a Zoom. If there is no further business tonight, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
Before you adjourn, remember that we're supposed to be in front of the select board on the 21st with a housing production plan.
Thank you for that, Frank.
And then I will second Jason's motion.
Thank you, Frank. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a quick vote to close our meeting this evening. Trustee Allison,
Yes.
Trustee Briner,
Yes.
Trustee Streeter,
Yes.
Trustee Williams,
Yes.
and Trustee Victoria Petracca. Yes, Housing Trust, we are adjourned at 8:47 tonight.